Hey folks, I'm Eric the Old Jarhead. Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've watched any of my fairly recent cabin videos, you will have seen this guy, I'm sure. This is a 4-inch PVC motorized baffle. So essentially, I bought this off of Amazon because I needed to put in a baffle on my solar pop can heating system. I built this big 4x8 solar pop can heater and it was working great. The only problem that I found was that at night heat would rise to the top of the room. Well, it does that all the time, but at night it would go out the inlet of that heater, out to the heater, go down the heater as it cooled down and come back in through the floor vent as cool air. So I could get that room up to 60 or 70 degrees during the day, especially with the wood stove in the cabin working, but the pop can solar heater could get it up quite warm in there too. Except that at night, the pop can solar heater turned into an AC pump and, well, cooled the air back down again. Now, it was still running 10 degrees above outside ambient air temperature, but I've got LiFePO4 batteries in there, and unless I move them, which I may be doing, after all, I've suddenly found myself in a position that no one with lithium batteries of any sort wants to find themselves in, and that is negative temperatures. That's right, folks. No battery does well in negative temperatures, but lithium batteries, even the latest and greatest LiFePO4s, which is what I have, at least they were the latest and greatest when I bought them, I believe, if they get that cold, you can damage them. They just can't do it. They stop charging at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. I've said 0 in past videos. Turns out that was not right. It was the wrong battery. I had different specs or something. It's 0, all right, 0 Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, no more charging, ain't gonna charge. They'll discharge all the way down to minus 22 Fahrenheit according to the latest specs that I have. And folks, that's not good, but what's even worse is they're not supposed to be stored in under 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if they're being used a little bit and they warm up above 32 degrees during the day, it's okay, because they're not really gonna get all the way down to that 23 degrees or whatever it is, and they can be stored at 23 degrees for up to 6 months. Can happen. They should be charged by then, or at least mostly charged, and you could store them. If you completely disconnect them, it is apparently okay to do that. But you can't run them like I am to power your cabin in sub-zero temperatures. In fact, you really should try not to run them in any temperatures where they don't get above freezing during the day. If they dip below freezing at night, the room they're in, really, I should say, then it's okay. They're probably not all the way down to 32 or below, even though the room is. It's because it takes a long time for things to warm up and cool down. So for example, at the cabin, when the cabin's 37 degrees Fahrenheit, and I get in there, it can take 4, 5, 6 hours to get it up to, 70 degrees, maybe even longer. Well, that's understandable because you have to heat everything up. You got to heat the walls, the floor, the ceiling, the furniture, the dishes. Everything has to get heated up before you really hit that, nice, comfortable, warm 70 degrees. At the same token, it can take a couple days before it fully cools down once the wood stove goes out. I used to notice that if my wood stove went out in the morning, say several hours after I was gone, by the time I got home, 8 or 10 hours later, the cabin would only be 10 degrees cooler. And I'd have to fire up the wood stove again, and it wouldn't take long to warm it back up. Well, these batteries are the same, right? I mean, they're sitting at a comfortable temperature, let's say 60 degrees or whatever, and then you leave the cabin and it drops to, 20 degrees overnight. Well, the batteries aren't gonna be there. They're in a porch, the porch stays relatively warm. They're not gonna drop that cold. Then during the day, if it warms up, well, then they'll still be cooling down because it's warmed up, but not to 60 degrees because I'm not there, right? Let's say it warms up to 40 degrees during the day. They're still gonna slowly drop to that 40-degree temperature. But if it drops to 20 again at night and then back to 40 during the day, they're gonna balance out somewhere probably below 40 degrees, but well above that 20 degrees. A long-winded way of saying it's okay in that scenario. However, I'm looking at -8 to -10 degree temperatures at the cabin this week. Folks, that's a problem, because even if the pop can solar heater was working, and there's an issue there, it still's not going to get that warm. Even if I got enough solar charging during the day, it was a nice, bright, sunny day, and I got enough solar charging that I got 2 hours or 3 hours of nice hot air going into that room, it might get it up above freezing and hold it there. And at night, it might only drop to 10 degrees while it's minus 10 outside. But folks, well, I've never actually seen that happen. It usually drops within 10 degrees of outside air temperature because of that reverse cooling situation. But even if it had that solved, the problem is that that's still too cold, folks. 10 degrees Fahrenheit's too cold, especially if it only gets up to, maybe 20 degrees during the day. You've got a problem. That's not going to work. So I've got to fix it. So there's two things I've got to do. One, I got to see if I can figure this crazy thing out, because if you watch that last video, and I'll drop a link down in the description below, this is all in Chinese. There's nothing in English here other than I do see like a plus sign. I mean, maybe that's international. And there are some numbers, 1 nm, 0 looks like degrees to 90 degrees, 0.2 meters cubed or squared or something, and 4 volt amps with a 5, DC 12, whatever. It doesn't tell you, there's 3 contacts here, and it doesn't tell you which is which is which. So I got to figure it out. Because if I can get this to work, maybe that's going to help my situation a little bit. Couple problems though. This 4-inch baffle is 4¼ inches inside dimensions. That ain't 4 inches. So we're going to have to throw a 4-inch pipe and just see, is it 4-inch PVC? Is there a difference? Because 4-inch ID PVC is probably 4¼ on the outside, so that inside here is 4 inches. The problem with that is, if you're going to try to use this on insulated duct, when they say 4 inches, it's 4 inches. It's not 4¼ It's not bigger than this. It ain't, and it's a lot smaller. But first, let's figure this out. I've got this 12 volt LiFePO 4 20 amp hour battery, which should be charged up. And I got some wire. I got my baffle. I've got a few parts and pieces. So I'm gonna stop yakking, put this together, and find out if I've solved the problem. I think I have, but I got to find out if this is going to work. So let's get to it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this positive circuit, because I think this needs 2 powered circuits. One to open and one to close the valve. And that is a bit of a problem for me, unless those 2 circuits do exactly what I want them to. All right, so what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to have a full-time positive circuit that it's going to be permanent. Power on all the time. I think. And then we're going to have a part-time. And the idea here is that my center port on this guy is the only positive port. So my thought was, okay, if that's the case, then I should, in theory, be able to run 1 positive wire to my battery here to start my first circuit, okay? Now, I personally think this is kind of backwards. So we're gonna find out. So there's only 1 positive, 2 negative terminals. To me, if I had 2 positive terminals and 1 negative, it might work better, but we're gonna find out. So the first circuit is the circuit that will open the valve. Right now, the valve is closed. That's the way we want it. So what we want here is we want 2 of these guys. Assuming I understand the way this thing works. One of them is to close this baffle. And that is the first circuit. So we want to close it. And the reason we want to close it is the normal position for this baffle should be closed, so that when the heater is not working, the baffle's closed. we don't get any reverse flow of the nice warm air that we've got in that room. Now, I'm not convinced that what I'm doing right now is going to work. So if you're an electrician out there and you take a closer look at this baffle I've got, I'll drop a link in the description below, then you could tell me what you think. Because I don't think these two negatives are going to have any impact at all whatsoever. And the reason I say that is because this is one powered circuit. Okay? So you've got one negative, one positive. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this first negative and we are going to install it on one side, and we're going to figure out which is the side that opens it and which is the side that closes it. So we're going to take this first, and I'm just going to put this and touch this guy. Okay, this is the one that opens, all right? I took the power off. That's still opening. it's still opening. Interestingly enough, no matter what I do, with it open right now, it's not changing anything. So I'm going to go ahead and land that on. So we are wide open. Oh, it's closing. This should be its normal state, okay? So in theory, here's my plan. In theory, if I have another circuit that can also provide power, then in theory, the other side, we're going to put a switch in here. That's your off, that's your on. We're going to just put a circuit in here. Then the other side should close it. And I don't think that's how it works, folks. So we're going to put that in the off position. Cut another piece of wire here. Now the beauty of this is we can move this around so that, you know, if it looks like maybe we just need to swap these circuits or something like that, or these wires to change it, how it works, well, maybe that'll work, right? Well, we can find out. I think it needs basically two positives and two negatives. I think one positive and negative, one circuit, will energize it. Oops, a little bit too aggressive. That's okay. These are throwaways, folks. Okay, there we go. I think one side will close it and one side would open it. But we're going to find out if completing one circuit makes any difference. Okay, here we go. So it's currently closed. That's what we want now. This would be the situation where the solar heater hits 110 degrees and it kicks the switch. All right, it's opening, so I hope you can see this, folks. There it is, it's open. And the motor's still running. Oh, but now it's closing, okay? So we don't want that to happen. The interesting thing is because it has power, I can kill this power, it's still going to close. That would be the normal state you'd want. So now if I hit this switch again, I re-energize the circuit, what does it do? Well, it starts opening up. And then it closes. So that isn't going to work. Oops. So let's take this off and we're going to reverse the two. Maybe it's just a matter of figuring out, okay, which side is the side that it matters. So we put that one in here. And we'll run this one over here. We've got a bunch of bare wires here. Don't let them cross, right? We'll start welding. Got to make sure they're actually in where they're supposed to be. Okay, here we go. It's open now. So I kicked the switch. I don't know if you can see this. Try to hold it up for you. It did the same thing. It opened all the way up. Well, let's see what happens. I kick the switch and it's closing. Motor's still running. And now it's opening back up again. This is not working, folks. Okay, now it's fully open and the motor's still running, and it's going to close it again. So it's kind of confused, eh? So that didn't work. My little experiment hasn't worked. So it's currently in the off position on the switch, but with the continuous power to this side, it wants to open. Okay, it wants to open. So if I take that power off, it's going to stay open. If this power is on, it's going to close. The question is, that's power on, so that would be my main power on. When I do that, the motor stops and it stays there. So now if I reverse these wires one more time, I'm going to try this one more time because I think I had it right to begin with. This is currently on, so it's opening up. So if I kill that power, it's going to stay open. Okay. If I put this power back in here, I know it's going to probably close it. Which is what we want, right? We want it to close, which it's doing. I put it on, it opens up, and it closes. I think what you have to have is I think you have to have two switched circuits. I think you have to have two positive wires. I think you need the reverse of what they have here, meaning that you need two positives, and perhaps you need two negatives, but you need to be able to switch the two. So in other words, I need the negatives to be run with no switches in them, and then I need the positive to have switches so that there are two different positives. I think that's what you really need to make this work. So we're going to switch it around, folks. We will switch this around. You need two circuits. So actually, probably just two switches, one on either side. And if it turns off on one, it goes on the other. I think that's actually what you need. So let me see if I got another switch. I don't have another toggle switch, but I do have a light switch, and maybe I can make this light switch work with 12 volts. If you think I'm crazy, drop a comment down below. But what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and wire up both of these negatives to a switch. Folks, I'm not an electrician. Don't try this at home. Can Eric blow up his LiFePo battery? Probably some electrical engineers out there freaking out going, what are you doing? That won't work. We'll see if Eric's crazy contraption will work. Here we go. I'm going to tilt it like this. Well, we'll tilt it this way first, and I'm going to tell you what happens. Okay, first switch on. Nothing happens when you don't have your positive wire hooked up. Let's put this back on, folks. Okay, so first switch, bang, turn it on. And it's opening, okay? You see that opening, I hope. So that would be the heater comes on, boom, she opens up. Staying open, folks. Okay, so now we're going to kick the heater off, kick the other switch on. That ain't working. Oh, there it goes. I just hit the wrong one. And it's closing. Closed. Turn that one off. Turn this one on. Solar heater's working. Air's coming through. Solar heater kicks off. At the same time, this one kicks on. It starts to close. Stays closed. Okay. We figured this out. So now what I have to do is think about, I only have one switch. And the switch is a normally open switch that at 110 degrees it closes to create a circuit, and it will stay closed until it hits 85 degrees, and then it will open back up again, and it will stay open until it hits 110 again. So since it's normally open, that means that you have no circuit there. If it closes, it's like flipping this switch. Boom. It's going to open up the valve. When it closes, there has to be some way to trigger the other side, which means I have to have essentially two switches, or I have to have something that will allow me to have power in a normally open situation on that switch. So that switch needs to come back, and when it's open, it needs to allow power to go through, and when it's closed, it needs to not allow power to go through, but it needs to allow power to go through on another side. Does that make any sense, folks? I need two circuits. One, when the heater wants to kick at 110 degrees, I need one that at 110 degrees engages and allows the circuit to complete so that the valve will open. But then, when it drops to 85 degrees and that opens up and makes, you want this valve to close, then it opens that circuit. When that circuit goes open, I need another circuit to close and stay closed until that circuit opens up again. So essentially, I need one circuit that functions as a completed circuit, as in it's providing power to the baffle when that heater switch is in the normally open position. And then when it goes closed and it provides power to open the baffle up, the other circuit, the one that closes it, needs to de-energize, or needs to now be open. So it's like hitting switches. 110 degrees, this switch goes on, this switch goes off. Then at 85 degrees, this one goes off, this one goes on. So if you're an electrical engineer and you have that switch that would work for me, please drop a comment down below, because I need this thing to work, I think. So lastly, folks, I don't think this is actually going to be my solution. I wanted to play with this and kind of figure out, can I make it work? Because I've got to go to the cabin in like 2 days. Today's Tuesday, I got to leave Thursday. I got to get up there so that before Thursday night hits, I'm keeping those batteries well above freezing. That's just got to happen. If they drop to freezing, it's okay overnight as long as they don't get down below 20 degrees. I mean, at that point, I need to start worrying, apparently. I mean, it could get a little colder. It would be okay because they're probably not really at 20 degrees, but I just can't let those batteries get that cold, folks. So I'm going to have to go there Thursday. And the first thing I wanted to do was to put this baffle in and at least allow that PopCan solar heater to warm that porch up. Maybe that gives me a few hours. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But then I'm gonna have to take those batteries and I'm gonna have to move them. So is this really moot? Well, I have it. I wanted to try to figure it out. I figured it out anyway. But I think I gotta move those batteries, folks. And have you ever been in that situation where you're in not quite panic mode, but you're definitely in the, uh-oh, I'm worried mode? Well, that's where I am. $3,600 worth of LifePo 4 batteries at risk because Mother Nature decided it's going to be really cold this year. In fact, this may be the coldest winter we've had since 2013. This is 2023, so it's 10 years. I've often talked with folks about the 7 to 10, 11-year cycles. Well, this is a 10-year cycle. It's suddenly really cold there again. I should have anticipated this. It was minus 22 degrees there 10 years ago, but it hasn't been since, right? It's gotten into the teens at night, maybe even gotten to 0, but it's generally not that cold, and the PopCan solar heater was working well enough to keep things reasonably warm when I had lead acid batteries. They can withstand the cold better. Now I got LifePos. Ruh-roh. So, anyway, folks, I'm going to drop another video right here for you. And by the way, if I've solved the problem, that'll be the video that you see right here. But in the meantime, I'll drop another video that I've got. Check it out. Thanks again for watching, folks. I really appreciate your being here. The old Jarhead signing off. Y'all have a great day.